Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call. Behind the desk, I have my brother, Brent. And on today's episode, it should be very short. Recently, we did a podcast about the Western Hunting and Conservation Expo, detailing what's going on with the event. They have a new app that you can use to access the event, purchase things through it. You can do your silent auctions and all the things that the event offers. And then we talked about the events that Mountain Ops is doing around and outside of the Hunt Expo, like
the Mountain Ops
movie night, which I'm showing a film there.
The Cameron Haynes 5K.
Eva Shockey has a workout. I have a workout with Chris Spieler. Different things you can sign up for if you want to and participate in some events that are happening on the same weekend in Salt Lake City, but are not directly part of the Hunt Expo. It's just an opportunity for all of us to gather. So we covered that. I received a number of questions on the Hunt Expo itself in terms of allegations around how the Hunt Expo, the funds from the Hunt Expo, and specifically the Sportsmen for Fish and Wildlife have been.
They want to know where the money goes.
Yeah. I've engaged a few. I've gone through a bunch of emails and personal messages and YouTube video comments. And this is a much easier format. I'm just going to kind of detail my thoughts on the subject right now, trying to be as succinct and quick as possible on, my thoughts on the whole matter. Maybe down the road, we'll get a rep from Sportsmen for Fish and Wildlife on the podcast, bring back some guys from Mule Deer Foundation. But in the meantime, in a nutshell, there have been allegations brought forward. This was primarily a K2 news article that people have sent me the link to, which I heard about back then. It was 2 years ago that it was brought forward.
And there's not a whole lot else besides this one article out
there. Was another article in 2013 that was in the Salt Lake Tribune and a few other articles where people have criticized the Hunt Expo, saying that they aren't sure where the money's going. And there's been speculation that it's not being used wisely. And so there's a number of people who will boycott the event and not go and so on. Anyway, what I want to do today is just kind of go over in detail some things, because the messages that came in, they're conflating some issues. People don't actually understand the basics of the nonprofit, how it works. It's kind of an issue where a news article comes out, says so-and-so is a liar or such and such is rigged, but brings forth no evidence or anything to really back it up, just speculation. And there's certainly a lack of disclosure, some lack of disclosure, which is quite normal. Among all nonprofit organizations. There's some that
all organizations, all businesses,
some that do a great job in conservation, and like Army F does a great job. They're more the exception than the norm. But what happened is that, like in this K2 news article, the state of Utah has 100 tags that are used to raise money for fish and wildlife in the state of Utah. Those tags have been allocated for use by...
They're basically used in raffles to generate money.
Right. And so they've been part of the Hunt Expo for quite a long time, and the Sportsmen for Fish and Wildlife...
The SFW.
The SFW and the Mule Deer Foundation together, MDF, have used these tags at the Hunt Expo to generate as much money as they can using those tags, and then they turn around and they take those funds and they use them for wildlife, turn that money back to the state of Utah. What brought up the allegations of misuse of money was that the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation came out and said, hey, we'll take the money from those 100 tags from the state of Utah, and we will return 100% of whatever income we get from those tags back to the state of Utah, where the MDF and SFW have said they would do, I think they said 3 out of every $5
Yes.
generated, something to that effect, goes back into wildlife, back to the state of Utah.
And that's because something went up for bid, right?
So, right. So every 5 years, it goes up for bid. So another organization can say, hey, we think we can manage these 100 tags more effectively, create more revenue for you.
It's just like a construction job. You throw in a bid and say, I can do it for X amount.
Right. And so the RMEF threw their name in the hat, and they said in their bid that they would give 100% of the tags, the money generated from the tags to the state of Utah.
But that has nothing to do with the actual other parts of the expo. That's just to do with the tags.
It's just the tags, right?
So that 100% is just about the money from the tags going back into the state.
Yeah, a lot of people misunderstood that. This is just about, this isn't all the money.
This isn't about the show that's put on.
Or anything like that. This is just
tags.
About those 100 tags and how they're used. So most people look at that and go, wait a minute, 100% of all tag revenue is way better than 50% or 60% or whatever that number is that goes to, so why in the world would the Utah Division of Wildlife select the SFW and the MDF and let them manage the tags when you could get 100%? Obviously they're in bed together. Obviously there's fraud.
There's some kind of collusion.
Yeah. And, it's never as black and white as that. It sounds bad on paper. And it's detailed in here. There in the article, it says, it came up for bid and there's a committee, involved at the Utah. So the decision created a firestorm among Utah outdoorsmen, who sounded off on DWR and the Utah Wildlife Board saying there was some corruption there. The thing to consider is this. People ask, like, how in the world could it be better to turn away the 100% return from the RMEF proposal? And they basically pointed out, and this is the case in my mind. The Hunt Expo has been proven. I can't remember when they started, like 1990.
No, the Hunt Expo started like in 2003 or something like that. 2006.
So it's been around for
over a decade.
And they have demonstrated an ability to maximize income off of those tags. So they use them at the Hunt Expo to generate, they get tons of people in. There's all these auctions, right? And all this happens. When you give them to another organization, they have to try to maximize those tags somewhere else at another show, at some venue they create. If I'm the business, if I'm Utah, I'm looking at total revenue. Total revenue. I don't care if it's 100% of the tags, money from the tags coming to me.
It's the bottom line.
Or if it's 50% of what's coming to me. I'm looking at, okay, at the end of the day, how much money are you bringing to me?
Yep.
Right? Because we want to maximize the effectiveness of these tags. And so it's like,
who's the better salesman?
Well, that's kind of what it boils down to.
If you can sell one tag for the same price that guy sells 5 tags.
Right. Let's say that the Hunt Expo makes $1 million and you get to keep 60% of that as Utah. And the other organization sells $500,000 for all of it and you keep 100%. Would you rather have 100% of $500,000 or would you rather have 60% of $1 million? It's kind of what it boils down to, right? Yeah. And I'm just throwing out numbers. These are just, but at some point, Utah Division of Wildlife decided that they would get more money out of what's there right now, the proven entity, the one has generated this money, over 100% of the unknown and what hasn't been produced. And when asked about it, the representative from DWR on the committee said there was no debate at the end to which one was better. It was obvious to all of us. They basically said that that with the risk to the state and our customers, I think it's really hard to assume the RMEF proposal would have given more money to the state of Utah. We just didn't have the detail to be able to say that for sure. And one of the things is you're talking about going to an unknown, going to a venue that isn't the Hunt Expo. You're talking about issuing these tags and putting them in the hands of another organization that hasn't really proven anything to you yet.
That's going to have to start a venue from the ground up.
maybe, or we don't know how they proposed it.
That's true.
But in the article, Fish and Wildlife basically said, you know what? We didn't like the proposal. It didn't really detail how they were going to accomplish anything when it came to the RMEF proposal.
Yeah.
What we saw in the other detailed proposal from the Hunt Expo was we knew exactly how they were going to generate those, what they thought, how much money they were going to get from those tags, and then how much they were going to return. It was very proven and detailed. It didn't help. I mean, when asked about it, the RMEF didn't win the bid. President of the Army at the time was David Allen, and he just said it seemed like the whole thing was rigged. According to the Fish and Wildlife, they're like, wait a minute, you didn't have a very good proposal presented to us. We couldn't grant the bid to you, even if you give me 100%. If you give me 100% of,
less money
of $500,000, it's still not as much as 60% of 2 million or 1 million, right? So it does come down to who's a better salesman. The state of Utah is giving their assets to a group that they think will generate the most income for them. I applaud the RMEF, and it's like, I think they are in many ways the gold standard of conservation organizations. When it comes to, I mean, they're just stellar. So this isn't a knock on them.
No,
I'm just bringing forward, like,
in this one
the
particular
reality
instance
of how these things happen. So I'm not saying either that there's no corruption. I don't know. All I know is in this article, there's two sides brought forward. They're in question of whether or not the Hunt Expo, or whether or not this was the right decision to make. And we, as sportsmen and as donators, we absolutely have the right to investigate it, and we should. I'm just saying it's not as black and white as, they denied the proposal that would offer 100% return on all the tags, and say, okay, well then there must be corruption. Like I said, you could get far more money out of the organization that still gives you half of the bigger pie than the one that gives you the whole pie and it's small. It's just math. It's just business.
And who knows? In a couple of years, the RMEF might come in and they might win that bid next go around. Who knows?
Yeah, there's a lot there. People have criticized the SFW for not disclosing where and how they spend their money, and I think it's a valid criticism. They don't really go into a lot of detail on that. I'd like to see more there. As regards to the Mule Deer Foundation, they actually provide all that information. You can go to the Mule Deer Foundation website. You can see their MDF audited financials, their annual 990 form. For those of you who don't know, the 990 form is United States Internal Revenue Service form that provides the public with financial information about a nonprofit organization. It is often the only source of information. It is also used by government agencies to prevent organizations from abusing their their tax exempt status. So these organizations, like I said, you can go to the MDF page. You can see where their money is going and how they're spending it. And then, as far as the Hunt Expo is concerned, they raise millions of dollars. That's not a question. It feeds the economy here, the hunting industry in general. And the way that money is generated and managed is completely different than these tags that are used by the state. So I hope that clears some things up and kind of makes it a little clearer. There's an article in the Salt Lake Tribune, like I said, from 2013 that discusses how that there's a lot of questions around whether or not the SFW has done right by sportsmen. I read through the article again. There's a lot of speculation, but there's not any
there's no evidence.
And sometimes I read through it and I'm like, I would like to see a lot more actual something damning, or the what did you say earlier? Like
the gotcha.
The gotcha.
You kept reading this to me, and I kept waiting for the gotcha. It was very frustrating, very teasing.
Yeah, and in the article, they basically said, they raised a lot of money, they have a lot of money. We're not exactly sure what they've done. However, we do know that they're a multi-million-dollar. It has spent money to purchase or improve habitat and has raised $7.2 million for conservation over the past 10 years. We know that. It wrote a check recently for $1 million to the Utah Division of Wildlife Resources. Great. But some think that there's some collusion and some bad behavior going on here. And then it goes on to not really cite what, like, it has a lot of circumstantial conclusions here. And then it says, later the article goes into, have they helped big game in Utah? You be the judge. And then he says, the person who wrote the article, he says, the number of deer hunters afield dropped from 146,000 in 1993 when SFW was founded to only 80,000 in 2011. Now, I don't think you can blame the SFW for the decrease in hunters.
Yeah, why I don't see how that's up in that statistic.
I mean, again, correlation is not causation.
Yeah.
You can't say that because these numbers are the way they are that now, therefore, the SFW didn't do a good job. We have seen a decline in hunting from 1993 in number of hunters from 1993 to present across the board, not just in Utah.
Yep.
This isn't just a Utah thing. And so to attribute this decline in hunters as a failure of the SFW is quite a reach, in my opinion. And then it says the number of bucks killed dropped from 23,000 to 21,000. Again, you have from 93 to now, but still you have 146,000 hunters to 80,000. I mean, you have a huge drop in the number of hunters, and yet you almost kill the same amount of deer. Yeah. I don't see that also as like this damning. It's like, okay, so we kill fewer deer. Does that mean that we have less deer? That's not a very good metric.
No.
To determine
I don't know what that's measuring.
To whether someone is failing as an organization is number of bucks killed. Well, what about the number of bucks available? And if there's only 80,000 hunters now and you're killing the same amount of deer, roughly.
Yeah.
And before there was 146,000 hunters and you killed a couple thousand more deer per year. Or in total, not per year.
Yeah.
I don't see the correlation here. And then it says the number of antelope, moose, and bison that hunters and animals harvested declined during that same time period. Again, I don't see how that is a reflection of SFW per se. There's a lot of things that can play into that those numbers. It doesn't say by how much. I assume by not much because otherwise, the numbers would be given. The success stories are elk and bighorn sheep. It said Utah elk hunters have increased from 48,000 to 57,000. So elk hunters have increased since 1993 to 2011. They've increased, 10,000 roughly, with the bull harvest going from 6,000 a year to 7,000 roughly. And the bighorn sheep jumped from 17 in 1993 to 54 in 2011. So those numbers have increased. So again, I don't see the gotcha. Elk and sheep are crushing it. Deer are about flat. There's been a small decline in moose and a couple others in terms of amount harvested, and hunter numbers have dropped. But again, that's a cultural nationwide issue. Anyway, the article just says, while SFW and its many subsidiaries might do some good for wildlife, which I think is pretty harsh to say might, because they have.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we have organizations that are out there doing something. Those who donate think they're helping big game should realize that many of these groups' officers have a heavy financial stake. And the continued commercialization of the public's wildlife should cause concern that herds are being managed not on the basis of sound biology, but in ways to produce more cash.
Cash makes the world kind of go around,
That's
brother.
the thing. It's somewhat, they're kind of tied together in a sense that the better the wildlife, the better the animals, the more tags you can issue, the better the hunt opportunity.
And that requires money.
The more money you make, the more value you can give a species, the better its future, actually. I can see how the state could manage wildlife to figure out how to make more cash, which most states do that. Wildlife is considered a resource. They're trying to manage it to make the most cash. And there's a lot of ways to do that. I feel like sound biology kind of is what's needed in order to make the most cash. Like they're not separate per se. So anyway, I just found again, this article is very circumstantial, and I'm not defending. I'm just as a complete, skeptic reading articles and things that come out in news, looking for the gotchas. I don't see them. Maybe I'm missing something, but
no, you can't judge or give someone an accusation without hard evidence. We're America, and we believe innocent until proven guilty. And if they are doing something wrong, then someone needs to find that out and needs to put it out there. But until then, I'm not going to throw any salt at them.
Yeah. So anyway, all in all, I mean, can the SFW improve their disclosures and be more transparent? Absolutely. And I would like to see that. Is it fair to say that they're just full of corruption and completely robbing the state? I not from what I can see. And just because the state turned down a proposal that was poorly written, according to them, and also included didn't really demonstrate how those tags were going to generate the same revenue, even though they promised to give 100%, that is far less than 60% of something else. In the end, I'm still choosing the one that doesn't give me 100%.
It's still more money.
It's more money. And that's the bottom line. It's actually irresponsible for the state to give the bid to the company that's going to the organization that will produce less income.
Yeah.
It's irresponsible. Things are not as black and white often as it looks. And you gotta kind of have to read the details and look into it more deeply. And again, I'm not saying that these organizations aren't without fault. Kind of my philosophy on a lot of these things, especially around conservation, especially around tag sales, around how states manage wildlife. In general, my approach is do not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, meaning they're flawed. They have problems. The bathwater is a mess. It's gross. We want to get rid of the bathwater. It's used. The baby peed in it, probably pooped in it. It's not great, but the baby's not bad, right? So let's make sure we get rid of the water, but not the baby. And yes, that's where there's room for improvement. But in general, I'm glad we have this Hunt Expo.
Yeah.
I'm quite glad that we have the tag sales that we do have. I'm quite glad that we have the income we have coming in. And I would like to see more transparency. And I think it's I think it's great for hunters and sportsmen to call for that. At the same time, I think I'm reluctant to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah. Brian, do you want to talk about your experience as an auditor? Because a lot of the questions were about why aren't they showing these things more often? So
people have said if they have nothing to hide, why don't they just let an independent party come in and do a full audit on them? Okay. I was an auditor for 10 years, and I don't think people realize what that means and why. Again, it comes to, well, if you have nothing to hide, why wouldn't you just open your books to be audited? First of all, that requires an auditor you put yourself at tons of risk, and you have to weigh that against the benefits that come from it. So when Trump was running for office, for example.
Yep, they wanted his tax returns.
Everybody wanted his taxes. They want to know all the information about Trump. Give me his taxes. Give me his taxes. If he has nothing to hide, that's the opposition's famous quote is, if Trump has nothing to hide, then he'd just show us everything. Often the reality with an audit is that nobody wins. So if they do open the kimono and they this is just from a business perspective, and they're like, yep, come in and just audit the hell out of us, right? You never really know what an auditor is going to find, what they're going to latch onto, or where they're going to say, oh, you made a mistake. It's kind of like your own taxes, personal taxes. You do the best you can, and you fill out your taxes the best you can. But who's to say you got it right? Maybe you owe 10 grand you didn't know about. 4 years goes by and they audit you. It wasn't intentional. But why would you ever just volunteer to be audited?
I don't think it's ever a good idea. You never put more information out there than is what is absolutely necessary.
That's the whole thing. In today's world, why would you put out more information than is necessary?
Personal information is secret and sacred.
And you put yourself at tremendous risk by having an audit done, and you have to weigh that against the benefit. Mm-hmm. Now, from the RMF, from the perspective of this organization, are people going to stop attending the show, or are you not going to be able to get the bid, or right? Like, are there going to be these risks associated with not doing the audit? And then are they weighed against the risks of doing the audit? And at the end of the day, like I said, I don't blame companies for not engaging in an audit. Mm-hmm. I as much as I want, it's not as simple as to say, well, if they have nothing to hide, therefore
people will find something to complain. They will latch onto something. Brian, you put out a free product that is educational, interesting, and fun, and people dig around inside of the stuff that you put out to find holes in it. And you're just a hunting podcast.
Yeah, an audit is not as simple as people make it out to be. No. If you have nothing to hide, therefore you would just open everything open for research and criticism. It's just not like that. You gotta realize what you're asking for. Now, do they have a responsibility as a nonprofit organization to disclose what they're doing with your money? Yes, they do, and that's why I think the SFW can do a better job with that. But I think that's the same for many of these conservation organizations, and that's why I think RMEF is the gold standard. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that really, really detail that out. You know, if you go to Ducks Unlimited, you can see quite a bit of where their money comes from and where they put it. I think that's absolutely the direction we should be headed. But a full audit's a totally different thing. A lot of these organizations are voluntarily disclosing exactly where they put your money. They're not getting audited. That's a completely different process. Well, that's kind of my stance on the subject. If you want to leave a comment below on YouTube, that's great. For those that are listening, send us an email, send us a DM, Instagram. We get a lot of those. We try to read through everything, and we'll answer your questions. And as far as this goes, I want to thank the guys that sent in the questions about the Hunt Expo, mm-hmm. and all on the questions around the subject. Like I said, I think there's a lot of speculation and allegations that are thrown around, but there's not actually that much evidence that shows something. And so we kind of live in an outrage culture. Mm-hmm. You know, you had that kid in the MAGA hat the other day with the Native American that came up to him, and the entire mainstream media convicted him instantly of something he didn't.
They called him the face of white supremacy.
White privilege.
White privilege.
Yeah.
Same thing.
And turns out, you know, that's just what some articles said, and the entire media ran with it. Mm-hmm. We have this outrage culture, and K2 News comes out with an article that frankly I felt like was really, really under-researched. And they basically said that there's fraud, and then had nothing to actually back it up except that the Utah Division of Wildlife rejected the proposal by RMEF. Mm-hmm. And so that's not evidence of fraud. Again, I think that there's just a lot, when we read things in the paper, when we read news, when we see things come up, you know, I see things come up about other hunters. I've mentioned this many times. They're accused of poaching, or they're accused of something illegal, and everyone jumps on it and says, poacher, 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 when there's actually been no evidence brought forward and no conclusion to the case. Mm-hmm. I won't sit there and condemn someone until the evidence is brought forward. When I see the MAGA kid, I didn't jump on the bandwagon and go after the kid. I'm like, well, there's clearly some it appears like he has a smug face, and mm-hmm. that they're heckling this Native American man, and you know, it appears that way, but I'm going to reserve judgment until I get more details. Mm-hmm. And I think it's always smart to do that. So I hope this helps. I hope this helps folks. And like I said, down the road, we might get some folks on here we might get Don Pay. He founded the Sportsman for Fish and Wildlife on the podcast. Might get him on the podcast to talk about things in the organization more fully. Hopefully we do. But in the meantime, I hope this kind of gives you my opinion on the subject and my stance on the whole thing. And I hope to see everyone at the expo that can make it. It'll be fun.
Yeah.
You can get tickets to my movie night with Mountain Ops. You'll see films with Jason Phelps as well, and you'll see a film with Adam Greentree. There's another film with Cameron Haynes, a short mule deer film. They're great films, and it'll be a fun night. Win free stuff from all of our partners, and it's gonna be a cool night. And you can get tickets for that at MTN ops.com/Hunt Expo. I mentioned this before. If you want tickets to the Hunt Expo, you can get $10 off each ticket if you buy them through the app and you use the code MTN Ops at checkout. And you can also just log on to www.huntexpo.com, buy your tickets there, $10 off if you use the code MTN Ops. Also, if you use the code, their Mountain Ops is giving away 250 $20 gift cards. So you could be one of those 250 people that would win a $20 gift card. So,
are we also going to have Gritty Bowman swag?
We'll have Gritty swag.
Yes, what I said. Are we going to have Gritty swag?
It's funny, since I changed the podcast and the brand to Gritty and dropped the Bowman, it's Bowman is in everyone's mind. It's just ingrained. It's deep, and that's cool because I love the old name as well. But yeah, we will have Gritty swag at the Hunt Expo. We're going to do some live podcasts there. We've got Corey Jacobson and Ryan Lampers coming on to talk elk, probably Ryan Carter as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to try to get a mule deer panel together with a few guys. They'll be live at the Mountain Ops area at the Gritty booth.
Mm-hmm. We'll be there. Come say hi.
Yeah, we'll be there. We have hats and T-shirts we're coming out with. We're launching that week at the Hunt Expo. So, yeah, it'll be fun.
Yeah.
It'll be awesome. So come say hi, swing by. We'll be there all week. And as always,
stay gritty.
Stay gritty.